There are places on this planet where the laws of nature appear to have been written differently, where rivers boil without a volcano, where deserts draw perfect circles that no scientist can explain, where caves sealed for 5 million years contain living ecosystems that have never seen a single photon of light. These are not anomalies at the edge of understanding. These are places that have been studied for decades by the best geologists, biologists, and physicists on Earth. And in every case, the research has reached the same conclusion. We do not fully understand how this was formed, or why it exists, or how it is possible. A waterfall that bleeds red from a glacier in Antarctica, fed by water that has been sealed underground since before humans existed. A lake in Tanzania that turns animals to stone. A structure in the Sahara so large it can only be seen from space, and no one agrees on what created it. And a river in the Amazon so hot it cooks anything alive, over 700 kilometers from the nearest volcanic source. This is our countdown of the 10 most extraordinary natural wonders on Earth that even scientists cannot explain how they formed. Stay until the end, because number 1 is a phenomenon spread across an entire desert, thousands of perfect circles in the sand, that has defeated every theory proposed in the last 50 years. Before we start, drop a comment telling us where you are watching from and what time it is right now. We want to see how many countries this video reaches. Number 10. Danakil Depression, Ethiopia. In the northeastern corner of Ethiopia, where 3 tectonic plates are slowly pulling apart, there is a place that sits 125 meters below sea level and holds the record for the highest average annual temperature on Earth, the Danakil Depression, where the ground is so hot, so toxic, and so unstable that stepping off a marked trail can mean stepping through a crust of crystallized salt into boiling acid below. The landscape does not look like Earth. Bright neon yellows from sulfur deposits, deep blood reds from iron-rich pools, vivid greens from copper compounds dissolved in superheated water. The air is thick with hydrogen sulfide, the smell of rotten eggs concentrated to levels that cause nausea within minutes. Without a respirator, prolonged exposure can damage the lungs permanently. According to research published by the University of Bologna in 2019, led by geobiologist Barbara Cavalazzi, the Danakil Depression contains hydrothermal pools with pH values approaching 0. More acidic than battery acid. Temperatures in some pools exceed 100 degrees Celsius. The ground crust in many areas is less than a few centimeters thick, with boiling liquid immediately beneath. And yet, in 2017, Cavalazzi's team discovered microbial life thriving in these pools. Extremophile organisms feeding on sulfur and iron in conditions that should be incompatible with biology. The discovery was so significant that NASA began studying the Danakil as an analog for potential life on Mars and Jupiter's moon Europa. But the phenomenon that scientists cannot fully explain is the explosive steam vents. Without warning, without any tremor or seismic signal, superheated water trapped beneath the salt crust can flash into vapor and blow through the surface, launching shards of crystallized salt and scalding spray into the air. There is no reliable way to predict where or when these eruptions will occur. The Afar people, who have lived in this region for centuries, harvest salt from the depression by hand in temperatures that would hospitalize most people within 30 minutes. They call the landscape the gateway to hell. Geologists who study it have not found a better name. If a place where the ground can explode beneath your feet sounds extreme, our next location is the opposite. Silent, cold, hidden, and sealed from the rest of the world for longer than our species has existed. Number 9. Movile Cave, Romania. In 1986, workers testing the ground for a power plant near the city of Mangalia in southeastern Romania broke through a layer of rock into a void that had been sealed from the outside world for approximately 5.5 million years. The air inside was immediately wrong. Oxygen levels roughly half of what exists on the surface, carbon dioxide at 100 times normal concentration, and hydrogen sulfide at levels that would be fatal to a human within minutes without protective equipment. No light had entered this cave since before the genus Homo existed. No rain, no wind, no bacteria from the outside world. What researchers found inside should not have been possible. In a place with no sunlight, an entire ecosystem was thriving, not barely surviving, thriving. According to research led by microbiologist Rich Bowden of the University of Plymouth, published in 2014, the cave contains 48 species found nowhere else on Earth. Blind water scorpions, translucent leeches, spiders that have never experienced a photon of light, worms that feed on bacteria that feed on chemical reactions that have nothing to do with the sun. The ecosystem runs on chemosynthesis. Microbes at the base of the food chain extract energy from hydrogen sulfide and methane, powering a food web that includes predators, prey, and parasites. These microbes have been operating this system uninterrupted for 5.5 million years. Fewer than 100 people have ever been inside Movile Cave. Each visit requires government authorization and full contamination prevention equipment. One careless visitor, one introduced bacterium, could collapse an ecosystem that took longer to build than human civilization has existed. NASA studies Movile Cave because it is the closest thing on Earth to what they believe might exist beneath the ice of Jupiter's moon Europa. If life can survive sealed in darkness, in toxic air for 5 million years, then the question of life elsewhere in our solar system is not whether, it is where. If life surviving 5 million years without light sounds impossible, our next location features a lake where the opposite happens. Nothing survives, and the dead do not decay, they turn to stone. Number 8. Lake Natron, Tanzania. In northern Tanzania, at the base of the active volcano Oldonyo Lengai, there is a lake that looks like it was designed to kill. The water is bright red, not tinted, not pinkish, red, as if the lake were filled with blood. Lake Natron's water temperature can reach 60 degrees Celsius. Its pH rises to 10.5, roughly equivalent to household ammonia. The combination of extreme alkalinity and heat creates conditions so corrosive that animals that land on the water's surface often die and are preserved in place. Their bodies calcify. They do not rot. They do not decompose. They harden into statues, frozen in their last position, encrusted with sodium carbonate and sodium bicarbonate. Photographer Nick Brandt documented this phenomenon in his 2013 book, Across the Ravaged Land, publishing images of calcified birds and bats found along the lake's shore. The photographs look like sculpture. The animals appear to have been deliberately posed and coated in mineral. They were not. They simply landed on the wrong lake. According to research published by the Tanzania Wildlife Research Institute, the red color comes from salt-loving cyanobacteria and halobacteria that produce red and orange pigments as a byproduct of photosynthesis in the extreme conditions. The color shifts seasonally, turning deeper red during dry periods when the water becomes more concentrated. But here is the part that defies expectation. Despite being one of the most caustic bodies of water on the planet, Lake Natron is the only breeding site for approximately 2.5 million lesser flamingos. The birds wade into the alkaline water, build nests on salt flats, and raise their chicks in conditions that would dissolve human skin on contact. According to ornithological research published by BirdLife International, the flamingos survive because of specialized salt glands and tough, scaly skin on their legs. But why they chose the most hostile lake on the continent as their sole breeding ground, when safer alternatives exist nearby, remains unexplained. A lake that kills and preserves, that turns death into sculpture, and that somehow became the nursery for millions of birds that could breed anywhere else but choose not to. Lake Natron does not follow the rules, and neither do the flamingos. If a lake that petrifies animals sounds surreal, our next location looks like the Earth itself is bleeding. Number 7. Blood Falls, Antarctica. At the edge of the Taylor Glacier in Antarctica's McMurdo Dry Valleys, a vivid red liquid pours from a crack in the white ice and cascades down the glacier face. The contrast is shocking. Bright crimson against pristine white. It looks like the Earth is wounded. Blood Falls was first observed in 1911 by Australian geologist Griffith Taylor, who assumed the red color was caused by algae. The truth turned out to be far stranger. Beneath the Taylor Glacier, roughly 400 meters below the surface, there is a body of water that has been sealed under the ice for approximately 2 million years. Completely cut off from the atmosphere. No sunlight, no oxygen, no contact with the world above. The water is 3 to 4 times saltier than the ocean and saturated with dissolved iron. When this ancient water occasionally seeps through fissures in the glacier and reaches the surface, the iron makes contact with oxygen for the first time in 2 million years. It oxidizes instantly. It rusts, and the water turns blood red. According to research published in Nature Communications in 2015 by geomicrobiologist Jill McCookie of the University of Tennessee, the sealed reservoir beneath the glacier contains active microbial life. These organisms have survived for 2 million years by metabolizing sulfate and iron in the absence of oxygen and light. They represent one of the most isolated biological communities ever discovered on Earth. The microbes did not evolve to survive extreme conditions. They were trapped in normal conditions that gradually became extreme as the glacier sealed them in. They adapted in real time, over millions of years, to an environment that progressively removed everything that surface life depends on. And they are still alive. 2 million years of darkness. 2 million years of silence. And a waterfall that bleeds red from a glacier because ancient iron, sealed before humans existed, is meeting oxygen for the first time. If blood pouring from a glacier sounds like something from another planet, our next location looks like it belongs on another planet too. A lake that transforms into a mosaic of colored circles that no one can fully explain. Number 6. Spotted Lake, Okanagan Valley, Canada. In the Okanagan Valley of British Columbia, near the small town of Osoyoos, there is a lake that spends most of the year looking ordinary. Grayish water, unremarkable shoreline, nothing that would make you pull over. Then summer arrives. The water begins to evaporate, and the lake transforms into something that does not look like it belongs on this planet. As the water level drops, the minerals dissolved in the lake, magnesium sulfate, calcium, sodium sulfates, and traces of silver and titanium, concentrate into separate pools. Dozens of them, each one a near perfect circle, each one a different color, pale yellow, deep green, vibrant blue. The spaces between the circles harden into natural walkways of crystallized minerals, creating a pattern that looks like a mosaic designed by someone who does not think the way humans do. According to research conducted by the Geological Survey of Canada, the mineral concentrations in Spotted Lake are among the highest of any natural body of water in the world. The lake contains one of the densest known natural accumulations of magnesium sulfate, also known as Epsom salt. But the phenomenon that geologists cannot fully account for is the color variation. Each circle contains slightly different mineral ratios, producing different colors. But why the minerals separate into discrete, nearly circular pools rather than forming a uniform gradient remains an open question. Computer models of evaporative mineral concentration do not produce the crisp, defined circles that Spotted Lake displays. The separation is too clean. The circles are too regular. The Syilx people of the Okanagan Nation have considered this lake sacred for centuries. They call it Tliluk. Each circle, they say, contains a different medicine. During times of conflict between tribes, all sides would lay down their weapons to allow access to the lake's healing waters. A truce enforced not by treaties, but by shared reverence for a place too strange to fight over. The lake is visible from the highway. You can see the circles from the road. You cannot walk among them. The lake reveals itself from a distance and keeps its secrets up close. If circles in a lake seem mysterious, our next location features circles in a desert. Thousands of them. And the mystery is orders of magnitude deeper. We are halfway through, and the wonders ahead are even more impossible. If you are still watching, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next one. And tell us in the comments, which natural wonder has been the most unbelievable so far? Last time we had viewers from over 40 countries. Let us see if we can beat that. Number 5. Chocolate Hills, Philippines. In the province of Bohol in the central Philippines, spread across an area of roughly 50 square kilometers, there are over 1,200 hills. They are all approximately the same height, ranging from 30 to 50 meters. They are all approximately the same conical shape, and they are spaced with a regularity that looks deliberate. During the dry season, the grass covering each hill turns brown, giving them the appearance of rows of chocolate drops arranged across a flat green landscape. The name stuck, the Chocolate Hills. What geologists cannot adequately explain is the uniformity. According to research published by the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, the hills are composed of limestone, formed from ancient coral deposits that were uplifted by tectonic activity. Erosion then sculpted the exposed limestone into rounded mounds. The theory explains the material. It does not explain the pattern. Why are the hills so similar in size? Why is the spacing so regular? Why are there no outliers, no dramatically larger or smaller hills mixed into the formation? Limestone erosion in other parts of the world produces karst landscapes that are highly irregular. Tower karst in China and Vietnam creates formations of wildly varying heights and shapes. The Chocolate Hills are the opposite, near identical, near uniform, near perfect. Viewed from above, the hills form repeating geometric patterns. Some researchers have described them as the closest thing to a naturally occurring grid system anywhere on the planet. No model of limestone erosion has successfully replicated this level of consistency. A local legend says the hills are the dried tears of a giant who lost his beloved. Geologists have offered a more technical explanation. But between the giant's tears and the erosion model, neither one fully accounts for what you see when you stand on the viewing platform and look out over 1,000 identical hills stretching to the horizon. If identical hills across a landscape seem strange, our next location is a cave where nature built something that looks like it was designed by an architect, with hexagonal symmetry that should not exist in volcanic rock. Number 4. Fingal's Cave, Scotland. On the uninhabited island of Staffa, off the western coast of Scotland, there is a sea cave made entirely of hexagonal basalt columns. The columns are packed together like a honeycomb, each one a near-perfect six-sided pillar, rising from the water to form the walls, floor, and ceiling of a natural cathedral roughly 22 meters deep and 20 meters high. When ocean waves enter the cave, they crash against the basalt walls and produce deep, resonant echoes that sound remarkably like organ music. The effect was so striking that the composer Felix Mendelssohn visited in 1829 and wrote his Hebrides Overture directly inspired by the acoustics of the cave. The columns were formed when volcanic lava cooled slowly approximately 60 million years ago. As basaltic lava cools, it contracts, and under ideal conditions, the contraction produces fracture patterns that are hexagonal. This process, known as columnar jointing, is well understood in geological terms. What is less well understood is why the columns at Fingal's Cave are so uniform. According to research published in Physical Review Letters in 2018 by a team from the University of Liverpool led by volcanologist Mike Sherlock, the hexagonal regularity observed at Staffa exceeds what standard cooling models predict. The columns are more consistent in diameter, more regular in their six-sided geometry, and more precisely aligned than models of basalt cooling can account for. Similar columns exist at the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland, which was formed by the same volcanic event. But Fingal's Cave arranges them into a three-dimensional enclosed space. A cave with hexagonal walls, a hexagonal floor, and a hexagonal ceiling that produces musical acoustics. The combination of geometry and sound has led some researchers to describe it as the most architecturally precise natural formation on Earth. At certain times of the year, sunlight enters the cave and strikes the wet basalt, creating a vertical beam of light that looks like a column of fire suspended in the darkness. Photos taken inside sometimes show light distortions that photographers cannot explain with standard optics. Nature does not build cathedrals, except here, where it built one from hexagons, filled it with music, and placed it on an island that most people will never visit. If a natural cathedral sounds impossible, our next location is far larger, visible from space, and after decades of study, no one can agree on what it is. Number 3. Rishat Structure, Eye of the Sahara, Mauritania. In the western Sahara Desert of Mauritania, There is a geological formation so large that it was not recognized as significant until humans went to space. From orbit, it looks like an enormous eye staring up from the desert. Concentric rings of rock, each one a different color and composition, spiraling outward from a central point across a diameter of roughly 50 kilometers. The Richat structure, also known as the Eye of the Sahara, was first identified by Gemini astronauts in the 1960s. They used it as a visual landmark for calibrating their instruments because it was one of the most distinctive surface features visible from low Earth orbit. For decades, geologists assumed it was an impact crater. A meteorite that size would explain the concentric rings. But no evidence of impact has ever been found. No shock minerals, no melt glass, no meteoritic fragments. In 2014, a comprehensive study published in the Journal of African Earth Sciences by a team from the University of Dakar concluded definitively that the Richat structure is not an impact crater. The current leading theory is that it was formed by a geological dome, an upwelling of magma that pushed the surface upward, followed by differential erosion that wore away softer rock layers faster than harder ones, creating the concentric ring pattern. This theory explains some of the observed features. It does not explain them all. According to geologist Théodore Monod, who studied the structure extensively, the symmetry of the rings is too regular for erosion alone. The diameter is too large for a single magmatic dome, and the central depression, where the oldest rocks are exposed, contains minerals that suggest temperatures and pressures inconsistent with a simple dome structure. Some researchers have proposed that the Richat structure may be the surface expression of a much deeper geological process that has not been fully identified. Others have noted its resemblance to the physical description of Atlantis given by Plato, concentric rings of water and land surrounding a central island. The comparison is almost certainly coincidental, but the fact that a structure this large, this symmetrical, and this unexplained exists in the middle of a desert is not. 50 kilometers wide, visible from space, studied for 60 years, and the question of what created it remains open. If a 50-kilometer eye in the desert sounds inexplicable, our next location is a river that breaks every geological rule we know about water temperature and volcanic proximity. Because this river boils, and there is no volcano anywhere near it. Number 2. Chiney Timpishka, the Boiling River, Peru. Deep in the Peruvian Amazon, 4 hours by boat from the nearest city, there is a river that should not exist. The Chiney Timpishka stretches for roughly 6 kilometers through dense jungle. It is between 15 and 25 meters wide, and the water temperature reaches 86 degrees Celsius in places, nearly boiling. Any animal that falls in dies immediately. According to geoscientist Andrés Russo, who documented the river in his 2016 book, The Boiling River, the process is immediate and violent. The eyes of the animal cook first. Water fills the lungs. The flesh begins to separate from the bone. Death comes within seconds. The local Ashaninka people have known about the river for generations. They call it Chiney Timpishka, meaning boiled with the heat of the sun. Their shamans consider it sacred. Outsiders were not told about it. For centuries, the river existed only in indigenous oral tradition and was dismissed by the scientific community as legend. Russo heard about the river from his grandfather as a child and spent years trying to find it. When he finally measured the water temperature, he could not believe his instruments. Rivers this hot exist on Earth, but they are always near active volcanoes, heated by magma close to the surface. The nearest volcano to the Chiney Timpishka is over 700 kilometers away. 700 kilometers. That is roughly the distance from London to Edinburgh. No known geological model explains how water this hot can exist this far from any volcanic source. The leading theory, which Russo proposed in his doctoral research at Southern Methodist University, is that rainwater seeps deep into the earth through fault lines, is heated by the natural geothermal gradient far below the surface, and then rises back up through cracks in the bedrock, emerging in the riverbed at near boiling temperatures. This would make the Shenaney-Timpishka a non-volcanic hydrothermal system on a scale that exists nowhere else on Earth. But the theory is incomplete. The volume of water is too large. The temperature is too consistent over a stretch of 6 kilometers. The distance from any known heat source is too great. The river does not behave like any geothermal feature that has been documented. The Shenaney-Timpishka boils every day. It has been boiling for as long as anyone can remember, and science cannot fully explain why this river, in this jungle, 700 kilometers from the nearest volcano, is hot enough to cook flesh in seconds. If a boiling river with no volcanic source sounds like the most impossible natural wonder on Earth, our final entry might change your mind. Because number 1 is not a single anomaly. It is a pattern, spread across an entire desert. Thousands of perfect circles, studied for 50 years, and every theory that has ever been proposed has been proven wrong. Before we reveal number 1, look at the subscribe button. If it is not red yet, fix that. And drop a comment telling us which natural wonder has been the most impossible to believe. We read every single one. Number 1. Fairy circles, Namibia. And now, the natural wonder that has humbled more scientists than any other formation on Earth. Scattered across the grasslands of the Namib Desert, from southern Angola through Namibia, there are circles, thousands of them, tens of thousands. Bare patches of earth, almost perfectly round, carved into fields of grass at regular intervals, stretching for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. Nothing grows inside them. The soil is bare. The edges are sharp. Each circle ranges from 2 to 20 meters in diameter, and the spacing between them is so uniform that from the air, the pattern looks like it was designed on a computer grid and printed onto the desert floor. They have been studied for over 50 years. Every major theory has been proposed, and every single one has failed. In 2013, environmental scientist Norbert Jurgens of the University of Hamburg published a study in Science proposing that sand termites were responsible. He argued that the termites cleared vegetation in circular patterns to create water traps in the arid soil, concentrating moisture for their colonies. The theory was elegant. It made headlines worldwide. Then, in 2015, biologist Walter Tschinkel of Florida State University tested it. He excavated circles across multiple sites and found no consistent correlation between termite activity and circle formation. Many circles had no termites at all. The theory collapsed. In 2017, a competing theory proposed that the circles were caused by self-organizing vegetation patterns. When plants in an arid environment compete for limited water, they can create regular spacing through a process modeled by mathematician Alan Turing in the 1950s. Computer simulations produced patterns that resembled fairy circles, but the simulations could not replicate the near-perfect circularity. The real circles are rounder than the models predict, the spacing is more regular, and critically, the phenomenon occurs in Namibia and, as discovered in 2014, in a small region of Western Australia, but almost nowhere else on Earth. If the mechanism were purely mathematical, it should appear in every arid grassland. It does not. The circles have a lifespan. According to Tschinkel's long-term monitoring studies published in PLOS One in 2012, small circles last approximately 24 years. Large ones can persist for over 75 years before grass slowly reclaims the bare patch. New circles form as old ones disappear. The desert is constantly rewriting its own pattern, and the rules it follows are rules that no human has deciphered. In 2023, a combined team from the University of Göttingen and Princeton University published a paper attempting to merge the termite and self-organization theories. They propose that both mechanisms operate simultaneously, with termites initiating the bare patches and vegetation dynamics maintaining them. The paper acknowledged that the combined model still did not fully account for the observed regularity. 50 years of research. The best ecologists, mathematicians, and entomologists on the planet. Satellite imagery, computer modeling, ground-level excavation, field experiments spanning decades. And the fairy circles are still there, still perfectly round, still perfectly spaced, still refusing to match any theory that anyone has proposed. The Himba people of Namibia call them the footprints of the gods. Scientists call them one of nature's greatest mysteries. The difference between those two explanations is smaller than either side would like to admit. 10 wonders, 6 continents, billions of years of geological history, and a single thread connecting all of them. A cave sealed for 5 million years that contains an ecosystem running on chemistry instead of sunlight. A lake that turns death into sculpture and nursery into poison. A glacier that bleeds water sealed since before our species existed. A 50-kilometer eye in the desert visible from space. And a boiling river 700 kilometers from the nearest volcano. Every one of these places has been studied, measured, analyzed, modeled, published, peer-reviewed. And in every case, the explanation is incomplete. The theory works partially. The model reproduces some features. The data confirms certain aspects. But the full picture, the why behind the what, remains out of reach. Perhaps the most important thing these places teach us is not about geology or biology or chemistry. It is about humility. We live on a planet that is 4.5 billion years old. We have been studying it seriously for roughly 300 years. And it still surprises us. Still defeats our best models. Still produces phenomena that look designed but were not. Still hides secrets in deserts, in glaciers, in caves, and in rivers that do not follow the rules we wrote for them. Which wonder was the most impossible to you? Tell us in the comments. And if you made it to the end, you already know this channel is for you. Hit subscribe. Turn on notifications. The next video takes you somewhere even more impossible. We will see you there.